Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Right, inshallah, now we'll get straight into the two talks that we've got planned for tonight. The first one of which will be given by Brother Peter, who is a convert or revert to Islam, whichever word you prefer. I don't want to say too much because inshallah he'll give us his story and inshallah some interesting insight into his experiences from coming to Islam, inshallah. So I'll throw it straight over to Peter, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Can everyone hear me, by the way, at the back? Yep. Okay, Habib. Before I begin my story, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm 22 years old, Australian-born, Vietnamese parents. Currently finishing my final semester of design at UNSW, and I came to Islam in August 2009. So looking back at before I came to Islam, there wasn't much of a purpose or a reference point in life. Every day was just based on getting through the day, and there wasn't much more to it than that. It was always wake up, go to school, get home, go on the computer, eat dinner, then sleep to get ready for the day after. I guess you could call it blind living. This isn't to say, though, that I haven't had my share of fun at that time. By fun, I mean late nights at the internet cafe with my guy friends. So Islamically speaking, before I came to Islam, I was doing all right. I didn't drink alcohol. I can count on my hand how many times I've had alcohol in my life. I didn't gamble. All of these were embedded in me by my parents through my upbringing. The difference between me abstaining from these activities now, as opposed to before, is the sense of true accountability. And this comes with the belief and testimony of La ilaha illallah wa Muhammadur Rasulullah. And this is how I got there. It all really started when I moved to Lakemba in about 2004. And not just anywhere in Lakemba, it was directly across the street from the main mosque in Lakemba on Wanji Road. I could literally see the front of the mosque from my bedroom window, which was convenient for me when I did become a Muslim. Because I could hear the adhan every day. I could see when people start flocking to the mosques, and that would signify to me that it's time to get out of the house to go to the mosque. Anyway, how it ended up like that was quite odd, and still to this day is unbelievable. Because my dad bought out a house in Canterbury, which is where we were living at the time, and what he wanted to do was to put that house up for rent while we find a cheaper apartment to live in and get an income from the rent from that house. So my mum, during that time, had applied for an apartment in Lakemba and just happened to receive it as we were moving out. So a week after we settled into our house at Lakemba, a stranger knocked on our door and wanted to trade houses. So we were interested, so we checked out what he had to offer, and he had a townhouse, double-story, tiles, modern stairs, spacious garage. He even offered to throw in a car as well to trade houses for his small apartment across the street from the mosque. I was adamant against trading for two reasons. One, because it was further away from public transport, and at that time I was still going to high school, so this was a big point. And two, we had just moved in, and I was not in the mood to pack up everything and move again, even if it's a bigger house and it meant getting a free car. I later found out why this person was so desperate to trade places, because he was a Muslim and he wanted to live literally seconds away from the main mosque. So subhanAllah, if the trade were to happen, I would not have gotten the exposure to Islam as I would have if I had stayed. So I'm getting exposure to Islam from Muslims here and there, hearing the call of prayer every day, experiencing the night of power, the Eid right outside my home, where streets would be packed and the prayers would be loud. I remember it would always be an inconvenience for my family. At one point, we were given earplugs in preparation for the Eid prayer the next morning because we knew the adhan and the prayers would be really loud and wake us all up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. But I didn't seem to mind. This goes on for about three years until I come across a Muslim girl during high school. And I used to go to Canterbury Boys, and she went to Canterbury Girls. We both happened to participate in this program called the Young Achievers program, and both our groups were close to each other. So when I saw this girl, she was wearing a hijab, and I was curious because I didn't really see people outside Lakemba wearing hijabs. So this sparked an interest to get to know more about Islam. So she gave my number to a friend of hers to pass on to someone who I could talk to get more information. And I got a call from him one day, and he introduced himself. His name was Faraz. He encouraged me to come to a youth gathering that was happening at the time called Nahda, much like what is happening here tonight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a success. And I asked one of my Muslim friends to come with me to these fortnightly talks for about a year. So eventually, my friend stopped going with me, but I was still interested to learn more about Islam, despite how uncomfortable I may have felt during that time. I remember when there was a break for everyone to pray Maghrib, and this was every night as well, I often debated with myself if I should sit outside or join in with the prayer and mimic their movements. Every time I found myself doing the former. Anyway, so topics that were being discussed were the unseen. So the angel of death, the day of judgment, punishment of the grave, the hereafter, and all those sort of scary stuff. You think that this would scare me and deter me from becoming a Muslim or getting to know more about Islam. But it made me more curious because I've never heard of such topics being discussed with such certainty and detail. They seemed almost like fantasies and make-believe. And I guess this is an issue with growing up in a society like such as today, as we're taught to believe what's in front of our eyes or only of that which we can perceive, and that everything else is either magic fantasy or that inspiring historical recounts of characters should only be used as a reference and is not relevant in today's age. So I learned more about it. I learned more about inspiring companions of the Prophet, as well as the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these sounded like stories that were created only to produce a moral at the end, such as fables or a good feeling in the heart. But once I came around to the idea that these stories were in fact a reality at one point in time, they amazed me. I looked into the scientific miracles of the Quran through this little colorful book. It provided passages of scientific developments that had not been known to man until recently, and these were revealed over 1,000 years ago. So after this, I felt I was ready, and so I wanted to become a Muslim. I told Faraz, my contact, and as a response, he asked me, "Can you prove the existence of God to me?" As a reply, I told him, "Yeah, scientific miracles in the Quran, as well as the miraculous nature of the Quran." And he told me, it wasn't enough. And I was shocked at the time, but now being a Muslim, witnessing all that I have witnessed, I believe it was vital to create a solid foundation of belief, whereupon a whole tower of knowledge is built. Otherwise, everything else after that just becomes rocky. So Faraz told me to look into proving the existence of a creator. He recommended me a small but concise and conceptually heavy book for me to read called Faith and Progress. It went through the rationality of proving the existence of a creator, and that the Quran is his book, and that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was indeed a prophet who brought the true message. After reading the book and inquiring more about it, I was convinced. I called Faraz and told him I was ready. He arranged for a day for which we'd meet up with a company of some brothers for me to take my Shahada and become a Muslim. When that day came, I showered, put on some nice clothes, and started walking to where we were meant to meet up. I called Faraz to see where he was, and he told me he had been too busy to organize something, so it had to be delayed for a week. Not realizing how important that actually was for me at the time, I was okay with that. So a week went by and we met at a small center in Lakemba where I took my Shahada. Not to sound cliche or corny, but after I did, I felt as though I was able to take a large breath of air after being underwater and unknowingly drowning for my entire life. So I was with a small bunch of brothers who shook my hand and hugged me as I embraced Islam on the first day of Ramadan 2009. I also started to fast as soon as I became a Muslim. So after all the hugs, I began walking home. I was feeling over the moon, ecstatic, happy, on a high, whatever you want to call it. I was feeling invincible, as they say. I got home and I saw my mum sitting on the couch. She says, "You know, the Muslims have started fasting." And I said, "Yeah, I am too." And she said, "Wait, you're not a Muslim?" I said, "Yeah, I am. I became one today." In hindsight, I probably could have dealt with that in a much better way, but I was just feeling happy at that time. Frazzled and wondering where all this came from, she stayed silent. I thought that this would be the end of it. So I walked to my room. Oh, how wrong I was. So I hear my mum getting up as I walked to my room, so I stopped. My mum I turned around. She says, "You can't be a Muslim." I asked, "Why not?" She said, "Because only Arabs can be Muslims." I replied, "No, Islam is for everyone." She said, "You have to be a Buddhist because I'm Vietnamese and you're Vietnamese and because you're my son." I disagreed. It went on for a little while longer and ended up with me walking to my room. After a short while, she brought food to my table and told me to eat it. I told her that she knows that I can't eat it because I was fasting. I told her that I couldn't, even when she threatened to kill herself if I did not eat the food and renounce Islam. At this point, I was adamant on staying firm on the truth, because when I realized, and was convinced of a reality or a truth, I believe that I'm compelled to act as a response to that reality of truth, despite any circumstances that may befall. So weeks go by and I'm trying to stay away from home while I'm fasting. It works for a while, but eventually there's a day where it's just me and my mum at home. My mum and I at home. It was still Ramadan, so I was still fasting, and it wasn't a fun day. So I asked if she could take me to Officeworks because I needed to buy some stationery, and I wasn't able to drive at that time. And it was quiet on the way there up until we were leaving Officeworks. She said, "Under my roof, there can only be one religion, and that religion is Buddhism." I replied, "If that's the case, then what if I move out?" She replied, "Move out, where will you go? Who will take care of you?" She asked, "I will go to any place that allows me to practice Islam." She stayed quiet the whole time, the whole ride home. Ramadan goes by, and I'm able to sneak out of the home for Eid prayer after what felt like a very long month. The next Ramadan, things weren't as volatile as the first year. There were arguments again, as it was the anniversary of my embracing of Islam. It took my mum 2 years before she finally came around to the idea and was supportive. During the first week of my second year as a Muslim, I passed my mum on my walk home. She asked if I wanted her to make me lunch for work for the next day, because she packs my lunch every day. I reminded her that I would be fasting and I wouldn't require food. She then asked if I would like her to make food so I can eat it before I begin fasting. I told her that I'd like that. SubhanAllah. So one of the things that I truly love about Islam, so now my mum's happy with how I am with Islam, alhamdulillah. And one of the things that I truly love about Islam, as well as one of the reasons that kept me going back to Nahda, was the sense of brotherhood. I remember absolutely despising this one Muslim guy because of what I heard about him in the past, about his past. This was before I was Muslim as well. And one day when I came across him, we shook hands. He'd heard that I became a Muslim, and we exchanged salams. I felt as though all of the hate for this guy poured out from my heart when I shook his hand. I loved him as a brother in Islam for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this would be no different as well to those around the world. The bond of Islam is what connects all of us, so much so that if something is happening to our brothers and sisters overseas, it should instill a reactionary feeling inside of us as if it were happening to our own family. Also, I'm supposed to show you how I was before Islam, so I'll just show some photos. That's me with John Howard. I used to have yellow hair back then. On the photo on the top left, we're all holding up our right hand with one finger, which I found quite odd after I became Muslim, because at that time I wasn't a Muslim. And this is me after Islam. Say mashallah. But anyway, to conclude, if there's anything that I learned from my experiences that I want to share, it's to stay firm in the advent of adversity, act in a way that is in accordance to Islam, and refer to Islam for any problem. To surround yourself with brothers who are firm on their deen. This will help you stay grounded, as well as keep your objectives as a Muslim in perspective. Dhikr, it helps to refrain from sin, but also to boost iman, and that reverts are individuals. So each one has a unique guidance to Islam and unique tests as a result, and because of this, dawah to non-Muslims should have a tailored and individual feel. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us all firm on Sirat al-Mustaqim, to adhere to His deen, to fulfill and to work for His deen to the best of our abilities, and for His deen to encompass the earth and its inhabitants. Ameen ya Rabbi al-Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.